Welcome to Philanthropy SA. This is a podcast about and for the philanthropic community in San Antonio and South Texas. We introduce organizations and people who are making an impact in the community. Beneficent Financial is proud to sponsor this podcast, and it is our hope that you enjoy this conversation about the impact we can have. The goal is to edify and inspire. Now please join our host, Dan Rebman.
Welcome to Philanthropy SA. I'm your host, Dan Rebman, and I'm very pleased to be joined by my good friend, Cara Magrane, who is the Texas School Community and Public Policy Liaison for Traumatic Brain Injury System of Support for Kids Project. Cara, that's a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
It is a mouthful.
That's why we shortened it to TBI SOS for kids.
I do like the SOS for kids.
Yeah.
That gets the attention.
It does. It is an SOS.
And I don't want to like jump the shark here. We're going to talk about that in a second. So Cara has been involved in this project for a bit. She was featured on a podcast a while ago, a little bit over a year ago, but that was back when you were with Gronkowski. So you're doing this now. Want to hear all about that. You came to San Antonio by way of, let's just phrase it this way. Your accent is not South Texas or East Texas West Texas.
Definitely not West Texas.
Yeah, so it's, a little more northeast.
That is right.
Harvard Yardish.
I parked my car in Harvard Yard.
There we go. Okay, so what brought you to San Antonio?
Well, I came to San Antonio back in August 1993 with a program called the Jesuit Volunteer Corps. And the Jesuit Volunteer Corps is a national program, and it is like a Peace Corps, but it's with the Catholic Church and the Order of the Jesuits, living by Ignatian spirituality. And so youth or people graduate, mostly kids that have graduated from college, decide to give a 1-year commitment of volunteer service somewhere. And you live by 4 rules. Social justice. So all the jobs that the JVs, we call them Jesuit volunteers, have are social justice based. Spirituality, you live obviously by spiritual values. And community, so you live with a group of other volunteers that are in the same program, all working on social justice jobs, and simple living. And so you live, back then it was $300 a month, and you are in a community. You're living and working with and among, as we say, they said the poor, but the disenfranchised, the people on the margins, right? So that it's sometimes easy for people to say, let's take care of these people over here. But as a Jesuit volunteer, you are immersed in that community. You're taking the bus, you're going to the grocery store, you're going to church, you're going to mass with the people who you are working with and serving and walking alongside with. And the JV motto is ruined for life. And I love it because once you live that way for a year, it is, especially at such a young age, it's no matter what your foundation was and how good it was, you don't see the world the same way ever again. No,
that makes sense. Are there still Jesuit volunteers in San Antonio today?
Unfortunately, I think this is the second year that there are no Jesuit volunteers in San Antonio. There had been one of our dear friends was the first Jesuit volunteer class in San Antonio, and that was back in, I think, the late 80s, early 90s. And up until I think, like I said, this past 2 years, we haven't had any Jesuit volunteers in San Antonio. I think it's a commitment that a community needs to make and a spiritual base needs to make, but hopefully they'll come back.
Indeed. Well, we will work on that. That sounds like a topic for another day. And so you've been in San Antonio and done a number of things over the course of your time here. But right now, you are working on a project that I know is near and dear to your heart, and beyond any, personal relevance and that type of thing, is just something that I think you call it the silent epidemic.
Yes.
Talk about the silent epidemic that is traumatic brain injury, specifically within the youth population.
Thanks. I think the silent epidemic, that term has come from a TEA publication that TEA is calling concussions and traumatic brain injury, or we'll abbreviate from here TBI for traumatic brain injury. in our schools in Texas. And their data indicate that there were about 6,000 children that had been hospitalized. And I want to be clear about hospitalized for a concussion or a traumatic brain injury. Of those, 1,300 children went on to fall into our more severe and profound population of long-term sustained disability or challenge from that concussion or that head injury. So the simple math on that is that means that there were 4,700 of the children that were in our schools, and our TEA recognizes them, that had been hospitalized for a concussion or TBI that may not have been accommodated when they returned to school. And that obviously is a big challenge when we think about our education system and we think about how STAR scores and teacher performance and school performance and admin performance is based upon a lot of those standardized tests in their academic performance. But if you're a child and you've sustained a concussion from your ATV, right, from soccer, smacking your head with somebody else in a head ball, or you had a tough tackle in football, or you're a cheerleader and you've fallen off the pyramid, or gymnastics, any of these things, then your brain has that mild injury, and that affects how you think, how you process, how you emote, everything.
No, brain injuries like that can be serious. I know our oldest son who played football, he had 2 different concussions when he played. And, we had told him if he got a third one, then, he wasn't going to be playing anymore because there's a lot more important things than football. So I don't know. That may have contributed to him not wanting to play in college. I don't know. But, it certainly had our attention, especially after he got the second one. Now, in fairness, the second one wasn't directly related to football. He was being a knucklehead.
Right.
Anyway, so, so those types of things are serious. So tell me about the organization. And so one thing that I find very interesting is the particulars of your position. You're in this really neat collaboration, if you will, between University of Oregon, Texas A&M San Antonio, and UT.
Yep.
Talk about how that all came together and exactly kind of what your role is in that.
Absolutely. So the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training, or CBERT for short, is out of the University of Oregon. And they have been up and operating for over 25 years, doing lots of research, training, and working heavily with schools and school districts to make sure that children have the accommodations that they need in order to be successful academically. The University of Oregon, or the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training, decided to deploy the project in Texas. And by choosing Texas, they said, let's look at San Antonio, Texas, because they knew some people in the area and had partnerships and pursued partnerships with Texas A&M San Antonio, as well as UT Austin. And all these different groups come together to deploy a number of programs. One is, especially with the University of Texas, as well as Texas A&M San Antonio, we have a Promotora program. And this is a project that has taken a curriculum, a parent training, and modified it for families who have a child who is under 7 with a concussion or a traumatic brain injury. We think about kids with those big eggs on their head and, oh, it's okay, they're resilient, and that's all true. But if the foundation for that child keeps getting interrupted, their neurodevelopment or their language because they've had a few concussions, then that will impact how they grow and learn. And so it's really a project that's focused on that 0 to 7 age group and pairing a parent who has a kiddo with a concussion or TBI who's under 7 and the injury occurred within the past year to match up with one of our amazing promotoras who's also the caregiver for a child with multiple disabilities to walk with them. And it's 4 sessions of 1 hour, one-on-one, and just giving the basic understanding of what a concussion is. And this is how it affects the child and why taking care to prevent a secondary concussion or a tertiary concussion is really very, very important. And that's an amazing paid project that we are always recruiting parents to go through the training, as well as we're looking for new promotoras. And So that's how a lot of A&M and UT Austin are working together.
Very good. And this program that supports these parents whose child has had a TBI is available to them at no charge?
Absolutely. So it's 4 sessions with the promotora, 1 hour each. It's information, support, all of those kinds of things that are so important when you have a little one who cannot necessarily communicate that they are confused or they're sad, but they're sad because they have sustained a concussion, right? And they don't know what's going on and they're confused. So that lack of language in the early stages is why it's so important to help bring that awareness and then create all these other little ambassadors of parents who can make sure that their friends and their peers are paying attention to their little ones in that 0 to 7.
Absolutely. If there's somebody that knows either their own child has had a concussion or they know somebody whose child has had a concussion, how do they get in touch with someone to identify, to be able to say, hey, I might qualify, or I know someone who qualifies for this program?
Absolutely. If someone is interested, they have a child that's 7 or younger and they've sustained a concussion in the past year or a traumatic brain injury in the past year, and they'd like to see about going through the Promotora project, they can email our amazing young woman, Stephanie Brown, at UT Austin. And that email is stephanybrown@austin.utexas.edu. And then Stephanie will talk with you and screen you in or out and then move you on to the next phase. And the same thing, if you're interested in becoming a Promotora parent and you've walked this walk with a child with a concussion or brain injury in the past 10 years, you can email Stephanie or you can email me at cmagrane@uoregon.edu. Or go to tbisos.org and click on our email there. It all comes to me.
There we go. tbisos.org.
Yes.
That's probably the best place to send folks. They can find a lot of stuff there.
And they can email me there.
Very good. So talk to me about kind of what you're doing on a day in, day out basis to spread the word and let people know about this and all of that.
Absolutely. So one of the things that is really important about having this conversation, it's TBI SOS for kids. And in the time that I've been on this project, I think one of the challenges has been a gross misunderstanding about traumatic brain injuries. So when you talk to people about TBIs or traumatic brain injuries, they think more of the catastrophic thing, or they think of our wounded warriors. And that's all very true. All of those are traumatic brain injuries. But we're not necessarily paying attention to what is a traumatic brain injury. So when you think about a concussion is a traumatic brain injury. And a concussion is a bump, a blow, a jolt to the head or to the body that causes the head to go back and forth. And within that, our brain, which is soft and wonderful, it's not latched in there real tight. So our brain can go to the front of our head and hit the inside of our skull and then go back or side to side. And all of that causes what is a mild traumatic brain injury. Or I tell the little kids, it's like getting a bruise, right? Something soft has hit something hard, and then you get a bruise, which means it's injured, it needs to heal, it needs rest, you don't poke at it. And so just trying to help people understand that when we talk about traumatic brain injury, especially in our youth, that it is the concussion. Most of these things are concussions. And a concussion, most of them heal within 2 to 4 or 6 weeks. And so I liken it to a broken limb, right? So if you sustain a broken leg at whether it is football, whether it is, cheer, whether it is the ATV or any of these things, or just being a goofball, which children do, or skateboarding, right? And you sustain that concussion. But if it's a broken leg, we can see that broken leg. So we can pay attention to it and we can make accommodations in school and in life for that child. But with a brain injury, with a concussion, you can't see it. So you have to be really attuned to the child and the person to know what is a behavior that is uncharacteristic or, emoting differently, those kinds of things, or overly tired. And when we think about concussions and traumatic brain injuries, when you think about traumatic brain injuries, they really fall into three major categories: your closed head injuries, your penetrating head injuries, and as well as your anoxic brain injuries. And anoxic brain injuries are one of those things that's occurring more and more with things like near drowning, right? Or that's an anoxic brain injury, or drugs and alcohol. And then the child loses, cognition, or they need Narcan, things like that. So it really spans the gamut. And when it comes to that, those three categories of head injury are the same across the full age spectrum. So as you know, like my husband had suffered an acquired brain injury, and that acquired brain injury is really where that is a stroke or one of those kinds of things. So it covers the gamut, but helping the pediatric space understand that getting your bell rung at football really could be a concussion, and we need to pay attention to that. And as you said with your son, if a child sustains one concussion, they're 4 times more likely to have a secondary concussion. And if they have a secondary concussion, they're 8 times more likely to have a tertiary concussion. And that moves on. And with every concussion, we are, the neural pathways in our brain are being affected. It's not like bones that you bind them up and they heal, right? We really need to be protecting our brains and making them super, 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 super safe.
Absolutely. So we're going to take a break now and hear from our sponsor, and then we'll be right back to hear more from Cara about traumatic brain injuries.
Many of you out there care deeply about wanting to make an impact on the world around you. You want to help take care of the people and organizations that are important to you. We understand that because we feel the same way. Beneficent Financial wants to help you. Our mission is to help people like you with professional, individualized financial advice achieve their objectives. Whether your financial legacy will stay within your family or benefit the community at large, we are able to help. Call Beneficent Financial today at 210-999-5511. In addition to traditional wealth management, we offer philanthropic services such as direct donations of required minimum distributions, donor-advised funds, and foundations. Call 210-999-5511 or go online to beneficentfinancial.net. Let us help you do well so you can do good. Securities offered through Momentum Independent Network, member SIPC/FINRA.
Welcome back. I'm your host, Dan Redman. This is Philanthropy SA, and I'm joined today by Cara Magrane. She's the Texas School Community and Public Policy Liaison for TBI SOS for Kids, which is the Traumatic Brain Injury System of Support organization. Now, Cara, I know that you partner with a lot of different organizations. You do a lot of work with the school districts here in town and that type of thing. And then there's other organizations in town that, are concerned about the issue of traumatic brain injuries and head injuries. So talk to me a little bit about the collaboration that you do and how that all comes together.
Wonderful. There are so many wonderful organizations across our nation that are focusing on concussions and traumatic brain injury. Entities that we don't have a personal relationship necessarily, but like CDC. They have the CDC Heads Up campaign, which is really about focusing on sports and athletics and paying attention to that. We have local partners like our Safe Kids project out of University Health System. They focus on everything from safe walking to school and waiting for the crossing guard to they're the people that do all the training for our appropriate car seat fittings or appropriate infant locking in kind of thing. They do lots of neat things. Alamo Head Injury is another group that is based out of the Warm Springs Hospital, and they have support groups and they have mini grants to help people, and they have lots of wonderful programs. And their primary niche really is the adult space. So when it comes to the pediatrics, it is a little more difficult. There isn't as much going on, which is why most of my, like every day, I mean, I was at Southwest Independent School District this morning talking to about 50 special education and speech language pathologists and school psychs, just saying, hey, this is something that's going on. You're aware, how can we work together? Or an amazing group in town called Kinetic Kids. They focus on adaptive sports for children with physical or neurodiverse developmental disabilities. And they have this great project called Discovering Disabilities Day, and you go out to schools and there's a group there that is doing visually impaired. There's amputee group. There's them using wheelchair sports, showing kids. And kids rotate through these groups every 6 to 7 minutes. So you have to talk really fast to get the message across. But I bring, some things to help little ones understand that a concussion is a brain injury, and here are some ways to protect us. So that's another amazing group that we work with.
Well, Cara, I don't think speaking fast is something that you have
ever a problem for me.
A big challenge with.
Ever a problem for me.
And I'm intentionally saying this slowly.
Is that my clue to slow down?
No. You're all good. All good. So organizations that do this, I mean, the end goal here is obviously to create awareness, to help provide resources to folks that have had, traumatic brain injury. But part of your title here is also public policy liaison. So talk a little bit about the policy side and some of the things that either have been done or that you'd like to see done.
So when it comes to public policy, there are a few rules that already exist in the state of Texas regarding concussions or pediatric brain injury. That is called Natasha's Law. It's House Bill 2038. But that bill really is about making sure that on the UIL or the University Interscholastic League or the University League, the regulating body for all the extracurricular events for TEA schools, that TEA and UIL have this policy that is about identifying a child that may have sustained a concussion in a UIL activity, assessing them, getting medical treatment, and then making sure that you have the release for them to return to the field of play. And so it really is mostly focused on returning the child to the field of play. It doesn't mandate that there are conversations that are happening to make sure that the child has accommodations in the school to recover from this invisible injury that is not the broken limb. And so that is glad that's there, but it also does not protect any child that, my son plays club soccer. So if he sustained a concussion at club soccer or on a jet ski at the lake or ATV or a skateboard, it doesn't protect from any of those things or ensure that the child has those, that the school's notified and people are aware that that's happening. So one of the things that we're working on is to create what are called intermediate temporary accommodations, or an ITAP plan, and that is when a child is identified. It's a checklist. It's fairly simple to be able to say, can wear sunglasses, right? Because the lights are too stimulating, or can go to the nurse's office. Small things in order to just increase the awareness that though you can't see this, or sometimes people are like, oh, he's fine. He's just being lazy. I'm like, no, he actually is trying to recover from a concussion or a brain injury. And so we want to make sure that those things are done. So that's some of the things that we're working on from the legislative lens.
Understood. Is there hope that you'll get something through shortly? Do you have a sponsor and those types of things?
One of the groups that we're working with is the Brain Injury Association of America, and they have a Texas group, but increasing awareness and letting people know what's going on. We're still really looking for a champion to help us move this forward. So if anybody, if any, entity or any group or is interested in being that champion for us, or healthcare practitioners who've worked in this space and see this firsthand and know how important it is, they can absolutely email me at cmagrane@uoregon.edu or through the through the website, email. That would be amazing. And also people to tell their story when we're looking for people to testify and go up. We're already, we have a number of people that we've already worked with, but we really are looking to move that forward. And of course, in this legislative session with other things going on with the TEA realm, we know it'll be a challenge, but those bills have been written, and we've got some champions in the legislature. We just need community-based Texans to help us move that forward.
Push on the string.
That's right. And one of the things we're really excited to help continue the conversation forward is that when we look at San Antonio and Bexar County and the number of children K through 12 who are in our schools, the CDC has published a whole bunch of data. So when we talk about this, why it's important to bring concussions to light and how they can have immediate and sometimes long-term effects on a child's ability to succeed, is that the CDC says that out of 0 to 17-year-olds, 3.2% of kids have received a diagnosis of a concussion. Yet 6.8% are only 6.8% are diagnosed. So they know that this is a gross underreporting of the number of kids that are out there with that concussion or with a mild traumatic brain injury. And if you take those data, if you take 3.2% or 6.8% and apply it to the over 350,000 children in Bexar County K through 12, then that means there could be anywhere from 11,000 to 24,000 children that are in our schools, sitting in our classrooms, that have sustained a concussion that is not diagnosed and they were not hospitalized for, that is affecting their ability to learn and therefore affecting our school systems, our funding, and their ability to succeed.
So as you go out and communicate this with folks, what has the response been like within the school community in terms of, their willingness to kind of, help with these accommodations and work with you?
Schools are amazing. And Dan, my husband had been a special education teacher for years. So schools and individuals in our communities, they care so much. We have surveys that we are also doing, and people can access that on our TBI SOS for Kids website and click Take Part. We're surveying parents who've had a kiddo with a concussion, kids aged 10 to 17 who've had a concussion or TBI, anyone in the healthcare space, and anyone in the childcare or school academic setting. And one partner I forgot to mention is Region 20, which is our education service area here in San Antonio and South Texas, have been amazing. And so we've spoken to hundreds and hundreds of school nurses, and they've taken this survey, and we're about to publish a paper on the results from that. And when you talk to those nurses, or I talk to coaches, or again, special ed, or family engagement workers, everyone that I present to or speak with is like, yes, this is a problem. Yes, we know that these kids are here. The challenge is getting, besides awareness, but getting a system to change in order to accommodate. So one of the big projects that we have is modeling what University of Oregon has done in Oregon and in Arkansas and Alaska. And we are creating what are called BEST, Brain Injury Education Support Teams, or BEST teams in schools, and starting at the school district level. So we're working with Edgewood, we're working with Southwest ISD, we're working with Comal to try to get to go. And what that means is you just get, whether it is someone in that health, let's call it high level, the school nurse, the athletic director, the 504 special education person, to come together and say, when a child's identified, or when we suspect a kid has had it, or they self-report they got in a car accident but there's no medical stuff, how do we pull together, take a look at this kid, pull out that accommodations form, and make sure it's distributed to all the teachers and the people in school so that child can have those immediate temporary accommodations over those few weeks that they're healing. So that is one of the things. So we're working with some schools and school districts, but if anyone's interested, we can do these at private schools. We can do them in organizations that just want to raise awareness. And so one of the things in trying to get these in schools, trying to get through the systems, right, of all the way up to a school can want to do it, but then getting it through superintendents and assistant superintendents. But one of the things I'm working to try to do is just create what I'm calling concussion-aware communities and concussion and TBI-aware communities by saying during the health period, right, during their flex periods in school. There's this wonderful video. It's on our website under tools, and it is like focused on youth about sports and about gaming when they have to have a concussion and how often it happens. And it's less than 3 minutes. I'm like, can we just start there and build those communities and increase that awareness? So those are some of the things that we're working on. But schools have been amazing, everyone across the domain.
Very good. What's something I didn't ask you about or that you want to make sure we talk about as we get ready to wrap up here?
I think that just reiterating that March is Brain Injury Awareness Month. And so we have this opportunity to have the conversation about brain injuries across the spectrum, right? Again, whether it's a stroke, whether it is a military-based wound, a car accident, a noxic brain injury from near drowning, that making sure that part of that discussion includes that a concussion is a mild traumatic brain injury. And the more we're aware of that, the more we put the word concussion next to TBI in our vernacular, in our printed materials, in our conversations with our children about, do you keep playing sports? Because there can be long-term ramifications. Yeah. The more concussions you have or the severity of a single concussion. And I'm an athlete. I'm raising athletes. I am not saying don't live, don't have fun, don't do whatever. But when you are jolted, when you are struck in the head, any of these things, let's pay attention to that brain that doesn't fully develop until we're 25 and is a very precious tool. So increasing that awareness and going to our website. If you're a teacher, you can, or someone in, whether it's a teacher, a nurse, a coach, if you look at the school tab on TBI SOS for kids, the school tab has files in there that have materials that you can print, that you can deploy, that you can utilize for coaches, for nurses, for teachers, all that thing, as well as we have a tab that's early childhood for those 0 to 5s and some resources in there. Again, you can go and click on and do the take part for the survey to help really get that needs assessment about what people are experiencing, boots on the ground, or if you're interested in becoming a promotor or going through that project. All that can be found on our website, as well as the links to CBIRD, or the Center on Brain Injury Research and Training, and their countless years and years of trainings, webinars, blogs, all those kinds of things.
Very good. Good words to close on. So if you need more information about this, I encourage you to go to tbisos.org, and you can get all kinds of those resources that Cara was referencing. Cara, thanks for being with me today. I appreciate it so much. And on behalf of Philanthropy SA, I'm Dan Redman, reminding you to do well so you can do good.
Thank you for joining us at Philanthropy SA. We hope you found something to inspire you during today's conversation. If you know organizations and people who are making an impact in the community, we would love to hear about it. Until next time, do well so you can do good.